John Tory says city staff have found $6 million in cost savings in the latest budget. It's also deadline day for Toronto's vacant home tax. Plus, Metrolinx adding a new safety feature for commuters. So we have a lot to discuss today. Mayor John Tory is joining us now live with his weekly check-in. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Tammie.
I'll start off with the budget. You provided an update yesterday saying that there were efficiencies that were found, $6 million, and you are leaving it up to council to discuss where that extra $6 million does go. I wanted to ask, where would you like to see it go?
Well, I think we heard. I would like it to go where it's most needed, and if you listen to the people that came and made the deputations, they would suggest that, and I don't disagree that. We might look at enhancing some of the programs that address some of the root causes of problems we've had, whether it be homelessness or whether it be some of the violence we've been seeing on the streets. But I wanted to have a chance to have a discussion with the councillors about that because we've heard from the public. I should say, by the way, the $6 million is just part of hundreds of millions of dollars in savings and efficiencies found during this budget process, but they found $6 million more. And I've asked them to keep looking so that even by the time of the budget meeting coming up later this month, they might have even found more than that. And then the councillors can work on allocating that, because we've had many suggestions in terms of different areas of transit, social supports, and so on.
Councillors, there are some critics there, including Gord Perks, who says that $6 million basically is a drop in the bucket. It's, he said, quote, an insult when it comes to the $16 billion operating budget. What would you say to that?
I would say that's a very, very misleading statement to put in front of the taxpayers, because the bottom line is at the budget meeting, people like Councillor Perks can move any change to the budget they want. And all that would be required at that time is if they say they want to spend $10 million more on one thing, then they have to say where they're going to take it from. This is the exercise that I have to go through as the person who, under the new law, authors the budget. You can't just say, just keep spending more and just keep raising taxes more. So if Councillor Perks and others want to suggest other things we should spend more money on, they're free to do that in the debate, but they will have to indicate where that money is going to come from, whether it's through raising taxes further, which I oppose. I think we're raising taxes enough with an affordability crisis, or through cutting something else. And of course, the one thing they point to all the time is cutting the police budget. And I did make very clear yesterday in presenting the budget, I will not support any cutting defunding of the police. This is just not something that is an appropriate or right thing to do in this environment where we're struggling to make sure we keep a safe city.
Now, I'll head to public deputations on the budget itself. You had a couple of days worth. Did those public consultations make a difference in this final version of the budget that you presented yesterday?
Well, they did in the sense that they reinforced some of the things. And there was a spirited set of discussions and deputations with regard to the police budget. And I had to make a choice on that. And I chose to give an enhancement to the police budget, to put more police officers on the street, to improve response times, improve community policing, and so on. So that was a choice that I made. And we'll have a full debate about that at the council meeting. But I stand for not defunding the police as advocated by some of the councillors. But having said that, when I mentioned to you the areas that I think might be a priority going forward in terms of community social programs and this kind of thing, that came from the deputations. And I just want to make sure that in making decisions about that, which I could have done with that money, the millions that you talked about, that the councillors participated in that debate as well.
Now, we're just seeing some images there a moment ago of police on the TTC. We've had this increase almost now for a week, but we have still seen some incidents pop up on the TTC when it comes to violence on the transit system itself. We know that there have been some changes made, some additions made as well to the 80 police officers who have been deployed. But what is the next step if we find that these supports are put out there, yet people still don't feel safe, and these violent incidents continue throughout the system?
Sure. Well, first of all, this was not presented as being a solution, a sort of one-size solution to everything. It was meant to address a growing concern, a growing anxiety on the part of operators and riders on the TTC, and I think it has helped with that. I've had people tell me that they feel safer riding the TTC because of the presence of police officers and others. You'll note that some of the people we added laterally are people who have a great experience in dealing with homelessness and social, problems that people face and so on. And that's been a bit of the thrust of the additional people the city has sent in recent times. But we're now continuing to meet to discuss some of the longer term things we can do, both in terms of gathering more intelligence from the operators who, of course, are out there all the time, watching what goes on in the system, and working with the police, the TTC, some of the social agencies to do a better job of making sure a system that is safe and moves millions of people safely every day remains safe and gets even safer. So I think the police, and again, there was opposition from some of the same quarters, some of the members of city council who have an issue with this. I don't. I think it was the right thing to do, the proper thing to do, one of the only things that we could do that could be done immediately that enhanced safety and enhanced feelings of safety for people in the city of Toronto. And that's part of the job that I have. And I think that was the right thing to do.
And bail reform is something else that we're talking about this morning. The chief of Toronto Police, Chief Demkew, calling for bail reform and then listing some stats as well when it comes to those who are out on bail who are not complying and then end up being behind or suspected of being behind some gun violence here in the city. What's your take on bail reform and whether or not this is something that should be looked into?
Well, it definitely should be looked into. I started talking about this in 2005 when I was a provincial politician. And I think that while you have to be careful in terms of how you deal with people's rights and so on, and the presumed innocence that we all are entitled to under the Charter and so on, but at the same time, when you see the statistics presented by Chief Demkew that show that a huge number of the people who are arrested in serious crimes are people who were already out on bail on firearms offenses, you know there's something wrong with the system. And so I've suggested various things over time. I see Premier Ford is talking. The Prime Minister says he's looking at different possibilities, but even just things like having a special court to deal with bail applications by people who have previously been involved in firearms offenses. I think these are the kinds of things that are going to offer a step forward as opposed to just letting these people out. And the police chief showed the statistics that said there are people who are out multiple times on firearms offenses and they barely, sort of have the paperwork done from the time they're arrested on the most recent charge when they're out again, having been out the first time on a firearms charge. It makes no sense. Greater compliance. When you're on bail, you're supposed to be checked up by, somebody knocking on the door to make sure you're staying home and all those sorts of things. And there aren't enough resources. And maybe the provincial government could apply some money to having more resources to go do those bail checks so that people won't be out there doing something they shouldn't be doing. So there's a host of things to be done. It is a serious part of this problem. It's not a solution to anything by itself, but I think it's definitely its time has come for some bail reform. And I think there's broader agreement than ever on that now.
All right. Mayor John Tory joining us again for his weekly check-in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.